This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of the brand new PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, as well as PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, Text Expander Touch, and Disc Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to Mac Notables on Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, every time Dan Frakes and I try to get together, it seems like one of us comes down with something. That's just the way it's been. So right now, I'd like to present to you a healthy Dan Frakes and a healthy Chuck Joyner. Dan, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Miracles never cease. Good to be here.
Yes, the miracles of modern medicine, right?
Right.
And it only took us how many times?
So we're here. We're here.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Dan, I thought we would start out maybe by talking a little bit of Apple TV.
Sure.
It seems like that's a hot topic right now. There are rumors, and we always try to put the rumors to the side and focus maybe more on speculation, what we'd like to see, but also kind of examine where we are and where the Apple TV has been and where it's gotten to. Apple has called it a hobby all this time. It's sort of snuck in under a lot of people's radar.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that, well, for one thing, the Apple TV today is so much different than the Apple TV of 5-6 years ago, where it used to just be an extension of iTunes, and it had a hard drive. Some people out there are probably like, "What? It had a hard drive?" Yeah, you would sync it with iTunes to get all your media. It was a big iPod video, really. I mean, when you take a step back, that's really what it was. It was a thing you hook up to your TV so that you could store videos and music and then watch them on your TV or listen on your stereo. And whereas now, it's kind of the opposite, right? It doesn't store anything. It doesn't sync with iTunes. It's a standalone device. It has channels and all these sources of content, and it's now a place you can send video or audio from your other device. I mean, it's become it's completely the opposite approach to what it originally was, and Apple's been steadily improving it and adding things to it to the point where you sort of woke up one day and you're like, "Hey, this is kind of a cool little thing that I've had for a while and is now cool."
Dan, the decision, and this goes back a ways, and it's been talked about a lot, but it was recently brought up to me again. The Apple TV, because it doesn't have any internal storage to speak of, I mean, nothing you can really access. It has some for buffering, but it's a strength and a weakness, I think, both. But I'm curious to see which way you would tip the scales. More strength, more weakness?
Well, I think that it doesn't have internal storage partly for cost reasons. I think maybe primarily for cost reasons, but also just because Apple's approach from it has gotten away from storing stuff on the device and made it a streaming device. So I think in that respect it makes sense. Where I think it's a weakness is more in terms of on the current usage. Sometimes it would be nice to just be able to copy a movie on there and watch it for times when maybe you take it with you on a trip and you're in the hotel room and you don't have good streaming or internet options, or if your house just has some dead areas where there aren't any good ways to get network access somewhere. For those things, it would be nice to be able to have storage. In the longer term view, in terms of what Apple can do with the Apple TV, I think it's a sure thing that we're going to get sooner or later an Apple TV that runs apps, that you can choose what apps it goes on there and what content. And so I think the lack of onboard storage is going to hinder the current models in that respect. I think that we're eventually going to get to an Apple TV that's sort of like an iPad or an iPhone, where it has built-in storage, so you can download apps to it, things like that. And when that happens, the current Apple TVs are not going to be able to do much of that because they don't have enough storage.
And I've been surprised that Apple hasn't at least opened that up as an option. I mean, I know there's some things out there, some ways you can hack it, and I think that the hacks will allow you to to expand storage, but I'm not even sure of that. It really is. I mean, and you're right. From a cost standpoint, it's brilliant because it's cheap enough that you can equip every TV in your house with them and not break the bank, and that's fantastic. The simple fact of the matter is that I think more and more people seem to be pulling their stuff off the internet, but there are those of us, and I'm one, who has an archive of video material that I can stream it, yes, but it might be in many circumstances more convenient to have it on the device, sitting there waiting for me, as opposed to having to fire it up and pull it off of a Drobo 5N as a media server, or a Mac Mini as a media server, or some other option.
Right. And in other circumstances, for example, our family, we've got 4 or 5 of us who get together once or twice a week and watch like our favorite, a big TV show. Like we'll get together and watch Homeland or Downton Abbey or something at somebody's house. When it's at our house, it's great because it's already there. But when we're going to, say a cousin's house, the Apple TV itself is phenomenally portable. It's so small, you can pick it up, throw it in your pocket or a purse, bring along a power cable or use one that they've already got since it's standard. And you could be watching with just a hook up to the TV. But the problem we often have is that they don't have Ethernet by their TV, and their Wi-Fi network is really kind of bad. So if we have it somewhere else, we can't really get it onto the Apple TV. And so it would be great to just be able to bring along even a thumb drive with a couple shows on it, plug in the Apple TV, and then watch. And you can't do that right now. Roku devices, the little Roku boxes, they actually have a USB port so that you can do this. You can bring a thumb drive with a video or some TV shows or something on it and plug it in wherever you're at. But the Apple TV doesn't, and that is actually our biggest complaint about the lack of onboard storage for now.
And I have a Roku too. What's really interesting is I'm arguing in one direction, but in practice, I don't do it that much because I can do that with the Roku, but I very, 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 very seldom fire up the Roku. The Apple TV is so convenient.
Right.
And most of the stuff, I've had a Netflix subscription. I don't have one currently, but most of the stuff I would normally pull off of the hard drive on my Mac or wherever I have stuff stored, I can pull off Netflix. So
right. I mean, Roku offers the nice thing about Roku is it offers hundreds of different channels. I mean, they've got ones that Apple doesn't have, like Amazon Video, plus just independent ones. There are private ones you can actually, if you have the right code, you can download and run on the Roku. So it's very much more versatile. But like you said, the Apple TV is, especially if you're in the Apple ecosystem, is just more convenient. It's easier to use, and it's more compatible with the stuff you've got. So, I think that eventually, once Apple does offer an Apple TV that lets you install apps, a huge advantage of the Roku is going to go away because Amazon's going to have their own app. And, any of these services that don't have one now but do have for Roku are going to say, wait a minute, now I can put this on Apple TV. Sure, I'm going to do that too. So I think that is going to be a big issue for Roku down the road when Apple does open this up.
So the question becomes, why hasn't Apple opened it up?
I think that there's probably about 100 different theories on why. I think part of it is Apple has been trying first to get all of its own. I think Apple's waiting for the right time. I think they want to make the Apple TV a versatile, appealing box first before they move into like open apps and stuff. And that's why they've been adding all these channels and or apps, whatever you would like to call them, to the Apple TV screen. A lot of them just sort of silently. You wake up one morning and you've got new channels. Look, now there's a Disney channel. Now there's an ESPN channel. Now there's, hockey. And this has all happened over the last year and a half or so. The Apple TV screen now, instead of having 12 or 16 items, is up to like 25 or 30. And I think Apple wants that to happen first, for people to sort of get that it's a fully functioning, versatile device. And then once they come out, and then they'll eventually release an API for developers. They'll start making it so that people can add things or play games on them. But but I think they're going to need a new Apple TV for that, as I mentioned earlier. So I think that's also part of it. I think we're going to see a new Apple TV that has some onboard storage, that has a little bit more powerful processor, that has more memory, that's essentially more like an iPad in an Apple TV box.
Without the screen.
Right.
Dan, is that what you think maybe they've been waiting for? Is a powerful enough chip to put in this? And the chips that are now in the new iPads definitely are quite powerful. That now it may be able to do everything that Apple really would like it to do, and that includes games?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think they want to have an affordable but powerful processor that can handle, third-party apps. They need to get APIs out there that will make it easy for developers to make stuff for the Apple TV. And I think we're seeing some of that. I think a big deal was made about how Apple with iOS 7 has a controller API now, and a lot of iPad and iPhone apps now they use this controller API, and there are third-party Bluetooth game controllers that you can get. Some of them are built into iPhone cases. Like there's one from I think it's Moga and Logitech. They have ones that are iPhone cases, but SteelSeries has one that actually looks like a miniature version of an old, Game Boy or PlayStation controller. Now what is the old Nintendo console? Not
DS or
the one you used to have on your connect to your TV back in the 80s. Wow, I'm getting old.
Yes.
Anyway, let's just say PlayStation. It looks like an old PlayStation controller, just smaller. And so now there's an API there. So now developers know how to make games that can be controlled with a Bluetooth game controller. And so you're seeing little things like this that I think that combined with new APIs in iOS 7, and we're getting faster, cheaper A7 and A6 chips, and we're getting storage prices are coming down. I think all these things are happening, and they're coming together to the point where Apple can now make, I think, a little box that's powerful enough to run games, and they have software that lets you use external controllers to play games and control other things on the screen or other kind of apps. So I think we're finally getting, they added Bluetooth keyboard support last year. So all these things are kind of neat in and of themselves, but when you take them all together, I think we're getting to a point where Apple can release a full-featured console for your TV that has support for controllers and games and can drive a big TV with performance, and they've got an OS that already has all these features built in. So I think, to me, it seems obvious that that's where this is all going in terms of the Apple TV.
One other thing that I think is changing, though, or has changed, and it's changing fast, is the distribution models that the studios are comfortable with. I think for a while this had to impact Apple. That and even now there's still some that they have to confirm that I subscribe to Comcast at a certain level before they'll let me see a certain channel. But I just wonder how long that model is going to hold out. I wonder how strong the cable companies can be and the studios can be before they recognize that there's this whole ecosystem out there. And I know there are a lot of people that disagree with me, but I sometimes think that network TV is already slipping away in the quality of their content. And there are a lot of people that are delivering quality content that are looking for better ways to deliver it to you.
Yeah, I see all these arguments in favor of a la carte programming where, I'll pay this much per month to get my favorite channels, but not all the other ones I don't want. And from what I've heard talking to people sort of in the industry and people who are knowledgeable about the industry, the big challenge here is that nobody really pays the actual true cost of these things. For example, the amount of money that ESPN charges the cable companies compared to the home shopping network is crazy. I mean, it's out of like $100 cable bill, the amount that actually goes towards ESPN is actually very, very high, and HBO or Showtime. And so the idea of people actually the stumbling block here. Sorry, I'm thinking faster than I can talk here. The stumbling block is that if you broke out all those costs, only the people who really want ESPN are going to pay for it, and that amount taken together is not nearly as much as ESPN needs to survive. Meanwhile, the people who don't want the home shopping network aren't ever going to pay for it, and there wouldn't, so you come to a situation where right now, by forcing everyone to pay for all these channels they don't want, everybody's able to survive, and that might not be the case if everyone only paid for what they wanted. And so the cable companies, because of that, are hugely resistant to, and the networks themselves are hugely resistant to trying to break everything out and just do an a la carte subscription model. And that's where it's a challenge for people like Apple, where their whole goal is to say, hey, you can get whatever you want when you want, as long as you're willing to pay for it. But sorry, we can't give you this, and we can't give you this, and we can't give you this, because the studios or the network or the whatever won't give it to us. And eventually that's going to change, but I don't know. I don't see it happening anytime in the next few years. And I think when it does happen, it's going to be pretty messy.
But sorry, folks, let ESPN die, or let let other channels that can't handle it. That's fine. I don't understand why we have this this almost welfare system for certain channels, in certain areas. It really boggles my mind. If I want something bad enough, think about the movie that is going to be released this weekend, whatever it is. You're going to go and you're going to pay for it if you want to see it then, and if you want to see it in the theater, and if you want to see it first, you're going to pay for it. Otherwise, you can wait. I don't know how long does it take for a movie to get to HBO anymore, or to any of the rentals, but it doesn't take that long. Or I can wait, the 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is, to let it get there, and then go see it for a much cheaper price and in an environment that I control. So why do the networks have this vaunted position that seems to demand that we support them?
Well, that's just, that's what's developed over the years, and that's where they're at. And that's why I say it's going to be painful when it finally happens, because some of the networks that are being subsidized by the big ones they're going to die out. And even the things like ESPN, they have massive budgets to spend on huge TV contracts and all these fancy, on-site sets and everything. And we may come to a point where only the people who actually watch ESPN are paying for it, and they got to cut back, and they've got to do things less fancy and pay less for the college basketball tournament or whatever, things that they get. So it's going to be painful when it does happen. But I think you're right that it is inevitable, because too many people are cutting the cable, so to speak, and the cable companies are eventually going to have to come to different arrangements.
Well, the flip side, of course, is that your cable bill might go down, your cable TV bill might go down, but your connectivity bill may
your internet bill is going to go way up, right? But
on the other hand, I can't see that would be a 1-to-1 ratio. And if I can pay more and get delivery of just what I want the way I want it, I think it's something people would do. I don't know what your cable bill is. And folks that listen to the show know that I subscribe to the absolute bottom level, bare minimum cable. And the only reason I do that is because where my house sits, I'm in a bit of a radio shadow for a lot of the TV stations locally. And I do want local news. I'd like to know when the next flood or snowstorm or whatever is coming. So, I do that. But, the rest of it, I don't consume that much via cable TV. And yet I do consume a lot via the internet. And so I'd be much happier paying more for that if I could have it the way I wanted it.
Yeah, and right now I think the big challenge for a lot of people trying to cut the cable, so to speak, is that even if, for example, they could get, HBO is the big one, because people say, oh, well, I would cut cable. I would get rid of my cable if I could buy HBO a la carte when stuff is new, rather than waiting for iTunes, 6 months or a year later. But then they find out that if I wanted to do that, it would cost me $20 or $30 a month to do it. And suddenly you've got, okay, I want to get ESPN and HBO and maybe CNN. And then suddenly you're up to $100 a month, and you're like, well, I can just get cable for that. So that's where we are right now, and that's why I think it's going to happen eventually, but not anytime soon. But that seems like the obvious destination for how we're going to get our media, in the future. But we're talking about the Apple TV, and the other thing I think that's interesting about the Apple TV, if we don't talk about cable and shows for a few minutes, is that I have found that over the last few years, it's become much more popular with people I know, not necessarily because of all the channels Apple is adding, but because Apple is offering more content through the iTunes Store, and B, AirPlay and iTunes streaming and things like that are making it more useful as just a normal part of their entertainment center.
Yeah. And, well, the AirPlay part is still fascinating to me, because somewhere that content's got to come from. But people are almost generating their own content now to a degree that we've never seen before, and they're using it, and they're very happy to use that and consume that, as opposed to maybe a junk TV show for an hour at night.
Right, or they can just buy that junk TV show or rent a movie for a few bucks, spur of the moment, which I think has been the goal of a lot of, like, the cable companies. They've had these on-demand set-top boxes for years, but for the most part, until recently, it was always really old, junky stuff that nobody wanted to watch. And now with something like the Apple TV, you can sit down, click on the TV shows or the movies button, and you can be watching a movie in a matter of a minute or two. And that, I know in my own house, is something that's, even with the Roku, it doesn't work that well. You can go to Netflix and add stuff to your queue and watch it on your instant queue, but there's not a lot of new stuff available. Amazon Video, some of the new stuff, but a lot of old stuff. iTunes tends to have fairly recent movies, and it tends to have TV shows within a day or so of when they actually aired. And so all that content is there. And people have shown that they are willing to pay for it. A lot of people still think it's too expensive, but they've gotten it down to where a non-HD movie is at $3.99 to rent, and an HD movie is $5, and a TV show is $2 or $3 to see the episode that you missed and that you forgot to program your TiVo for. So it's, they're spur of the moment purchases now, they're impulse purchases, and I think they've gotten to the point where I know a number of people who've bought those who used to download them on their computer, but they've bought an Apple TV because it's $99, $79 if you get Apple's refurbished thing with a full warranty, and you've now got instant access to TV shows that maybe you don't have a TiVo, maybe you don't have cable, and so in fact I just talked to a friend last night who is there's a TV show that he heard about at the Grammy Awards or excuse me, the Golden Globes. He doesn't have cable. Said, you know what? I'm just going to go on iTunes, spend $30, and I've got the whole season, and I can watch it whenever I want. And so, there's a taste of that in the Apple TV of what's eventually going to happen. The other thing you mentioned is AirPlay, and I also have friends and family members who've bought an Apple TV for the sole purpose of using AirPlay. I mean, that's all they use it for.
This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of the brand new PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, as well as PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, Text Expander Touch, and Disk Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Smile isn't only the longest-running sponsor of Mac Voices, they're also one of my favorite companies to talk about because they have such great software across the board, as well as great people. With all the focus on the iPhone and iPad, it's easy to forget that PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro are the best ways to OCR, manipulate, fill in, edit, and do all sorts of things to PDF documents that you can't do elsewhere. And we all know the world runs on PDF documents. And Text Expander has to be my most used utility, period. It helps make short work of routine tasks in email, website updates, and more. One quick, maybe obvious tip: is that you can create a text expander snippet for the day or just for a special project and then delete it. It takes literally seconds to set one up and can save you time when working through tedious, repetitive tasks. A side benefit is that it cuts down on typos. When you type something repeatedly, you get faster. You also get sloppier. A text expander snippet is the perfect quality control method that speeds things up instead of slowing them down. Those are just two of Smile's many great products. Learn about all of them at smilesoftware.com, download trial versions of the Mac software there, then buy direct or find them all in the Mac and iOS app stores. Smile. Great software for your Mac, iPhone, and iPad. Thanks to Smile for sponsoring this edition of MacVoices. Yeah. And I give you credit because I guess I'm biased by the way that I use my Apple TV. I don't think of an Apple TV as, purchasing content on an Apple TV as an impulse thing. And for a lot of people, you're right, it is. I mean, I'm not going to sit down tonight and write out a schedule of next week what I'm going to watch on TV. But I also don't think of it as really an impulse thing. But yeah, I mean, you would have to wonder if you sat down and did the math and said, okay, I'm going to cut the cable, and absent all the other discussions we were doing a little while ago, I'm just going to go and rent the show that I like. And if, I try something and, okay, for $2, $3, I found out I liked it and really want the whole season, or I don't. But, I mean, and to rent an HD movie for $5, I mean, that movie lasts a lot longer than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and people throw down $5 there or more with no trouble whatsoever.
Yeah. And, I'm sure if our family did the math of cable versus how much about the shows we watch, the number of shows we actually watch regularly, we could probably buy the seasons on iTunes and come out ahead. What you lose, of course, is your idle channel surfing, which, it's 10 o'clock at night and you're just hanging out in the bedroom with your spouse and you say, hey, let's see what's on TV, right? You can't do that without cable, but you're paying a lot of extra, I think, for that privilege. So as long as more content's available on Apple TV and Roku and these other boxes, and even cable companies, I think that's where the cable companies see things going for them, is they need to have these boxes too, because for the same reasons, people are going to cut cable and they're not going to pay for a huge monthly fee just for the privilege of watching something when they, live, when they could be spending less a la carte. I mean, I think the cable companies are seeing that too, and that's why more and more of them are coming out with Apple TV, Roku-like boxes that that also handle cable, but on demand and purchase movies and TV shows you can rent and purchase right through your cable provider. I think that's where that's gonna be their reaction to people cutting the cord, is trying to get them not to cut the cord, but just pay for the same stuff in other ways.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, just the way it's shifted I don't think we always realize just what a quantum shift we've had over the last 2 to 3 years, because it's happened with relative slowness. And yet all of a sudden you have all these great sources of great content. Mm-hmm. Now, and Netflix has even dipped its toe into original programming with House of Cards. There's a lot of discussion about, what can be delivered in 4K over the internet that can never be delivered by the traditional cable systems the way they are now without a huge amount of retooling. The world has gone digital, and boy, whenever you start to even inch back toward the analog, you realize how limiting it was.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think the biggest change was when we first got a TiVo box. That was kind of the life-changing event in terms of media consumption, because you could just click a button and your favorite show would be always there, automatically recorded, waiting for you, and you could watch it without commercials. And if you were watching something live, you could rewind and see the scene you just missed or the play you just missed. And I think that, without a lot of people realizing it, that was giving them a taste of digital consumption, right? I mean, it was changing the way they looked at things. And before the TiVo, people had VCRs and they set them to record and stuff, but it was never as easy And even when you were watching it, the experience was not nearly as good because of, I mean, the whole limitations of tape and the way the VCRs worked, it was nowhere near as nice as a TiVo. And I think people started getting used to that way of watching stuff. And I think over the course of 15 or 20 years, people now, they don't have to watch things live. There are still some events people watch live, the big events, and they want to watch with their friends or family or, on social media and stuff. But the idea of I'll just wait and watch that show next on the weekend when I have more time seems commonplace today, whereas it didn't, I think, 10 or 15 years ago.
No, I agree completely. In fact, as you're talking, I'm just sitting here remembering having a VCR and then having one of those tape rewinders sitting beside it because you didn't want to wait for the tape to rewind. It was just too much trouble, And I mean, and that's kind of pathetic in a way, but we got to that point of I don't want to waste any more time, messing with the media. I want to watch it, and the TiVo gave us that, and now the Apple TV is giving us that in even more convenient form.
Right. So speaking of AirPlay, do you use your Apple TV for AirPlay or your Airport Express units for AirPlay or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that's probably the primary thing I do with it.
Yeah. I mean, like I mentioned, I know people who bought Apple TVs solely for AirPlay, and they use it for whether it's streaming music from their Macs or videos from their Macs or to show slideshows of the photos they've taken that day on their iPhone. And for them, its only purpose is as a bridge between their other Apple devices and their TV to get stuff onto that TV. And even then, I think people say, oh, it's $100, but honestly, for $100 for something that can do it that seamlessly is actually pretty reasonable. And the fact that it does everything else for a lot of people is just a bonus. I know people who bought them for that purpose who've then later said, hey, I started watching TV shows and movies off iTunes on my Apple TV. And to think that the original Apple TV, that was the whole point of it, right? And now for some people, that's the secondary purpose or the afterthought. But we've got, and you and I talked about this a little bit before the show, over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, our family just, initially some of it was planned, but a lot of it just sort of happened organically where we added an Airport Express to this room so that we could hook it up to our stereo to stream music. And then we decided to get an Apple TV for the bedroom because we liked the one we had in the family room. And my office has one that I use for testing stuff for work. And suddenly we've gotten to this point where every room in our house literally has, well, I shouldn't say literally, there's a couple rooms that don't, but almost every room in our house have either a TV with an Apple TV connected or an Airport Express with some kind of speakers connected or a set of AirPlay speakers. And the other day, it was actually one of our kids who made the comment about, well, you can listen to that anywhere, can't you? And it's true. We've gotten to the point where if I've got my iPhone and there's video or audio on it, I can tap a button and it can suddenly be playing in this room or in that room or on the TV in here or on the TV in there. And this is what, 10, 20 years ago, there were companies that would charge $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to set up these whole home systems where you could listen to your music all over the house. And even companies like Sonos make some really great gear for getting your audio everywhere in the house, but it's not cheap. It's fairly expensive to outfit a whole house. And Apple's actually got a system now. It's not totally reliable. I want to say that right up front. It's not totally reliable. Sometimes Airport Express is a little finicky. But AirPlay and the whole ecosystem works phenomenally well, especially given the cost. And suddenly we've got a whole home audio video system that just sort of feels like it just appeared one day.
Yeah, and that's sort of the thing about the Apple TV and AirPlay and Airport Express. Apple just kind of snuck this stuff in on us, and they made it very affordable. And so and in fact, I bet there are a lot of people that have these capabilities that they don't fully appreciate, that they've got all this gear in their house that,
oh yes,
hit the right buttons and it all works. And it's not like you have to hire a PhD to figure out which buttons to hit. You always have to just remember that it can do it, and click those buttons, and then it does it.
Right. And my biggest complaint about it is actually that on iOS devices you can only stream to one AirPlay, like for audio, for example. If I've got my iPhone, I can only stream to one AirPlay destination, whether it's an AirPlay speaker or an Airport Express or Apple TV, only one at a time. On the Mac, you can stream to multiple ones. And if you've got an application such as Airfoil, it doesn't even have to be from iTunes. You can stream from the Pandora app. You can stream from a Spotify. Any audio source on your Mac, you can then stream to multiple AirPlay destinations. And I would love to see Apple add those two features. I'd like to see iOS devices be able to stream to multiple devices, and I'd love to see the AirPlay on a Mac be able to stream from any app rather than just iTunes. But like I said, there are workarounds for that now, and they work well. And we use AirPlay all the time. We've actually got when we remodeled our house, we decided to put in-ceiling speakers in our bedroom with just a little. We just got a little small amp and an Airport Express and put it in the closet. And so now our bedroom has speakers that are AirPlay. And so, my wife, my kids, they know how to use it, and it gets used all like on a daily basis. So that whole thing, I think the speakers were like $150, and we had the Airport Express from that doesn't do anything because it's 5 years old, but it still has an audio out jack, and so the cost was relatively minimal. And I think that a lot of people don't realize, like you said, that they have those capabilities probably already, especially if they got an old Airport Express sitting on a shelf because they've upgraded.
Yeah, and the old stuff works great when it comes to just music. Now, video, you may need something a little better, but the old stuff you can afford to stick an old Airport Express in the garage and plug a set of speakers into it that you probably had. You got those. Those are probably 15 years old. They're sitting on a shelf somewhere in the garage or in the basement. Plug it in, and okay, so it's not ideal quality, but you don't need ideal quality in the garage. You probably don't want ideal quality in the garage.
Right. Well, and we've also, in terms of AirPlay video, the last couple of weeks, the Olympics have been going on, and there are a couple channels on cable that carry various events, but NBC is streaming a lot of it on their NBC Live Extra app for the iPad and iPhone. And I got to say, the app is kind of crappy. Pardon, sorry, but it's not a great app. But the fact is, I can bring it up on my phone and send the video to my Apple TV, and we are watching full event replays from stuff that happened earlier that day, or live events like the U.S.-Canada hockey match today. You could watch that live on your TV if you had an iPhone or iPad and an Apple TV. And those are the kind of things that we kind of take for granted now because we've been using it for a while. But then we have friends come over and they're like, wait, how are you doing that? Didn't you just take that picture on your phone outside and it's on your TV? And it's, it's a very nice solution. And it's, those are the kind of features I think Apple doesn't advertise enough. Granted, they barely advertise the Apple TV at all, but I think that they could, with a little effort, get a lot more people interested in it.
And you just hit it. They haven't advertised it. I don't know if that's one of the definitions of a hobby for Apple, but it's all been word of mouth. It's all been the people that have kind of picked it up because a friend told them, or they discovered that it could do this or do that. And now, is it the second? Is it number 2 or number 3 set-top box? I think it's number 2, isn't it?
I honestly don't know. I haven't seen those numbers.
I think I saw somewhere that's. I'm afraid to say it's number 1, but it's definitely in the top set-top boxes, and it's a hobby.
Right.
And it's just like you say, it's just been slowly getting better under the radar of a lot of people, and now, so folks, if you have an Apple TV, you need to go and find out what all it can do. Right now, go pause this and go check it out.
Well, and our friends over at Tidbits Take Control. They just released a Take Control of Apple TV book a couple weeks ago. That's great. Just for that very reason. It's like a $5 or $10 ebook that tells you everything your Apple TV can do and how to do it, and it's actually very good.
Yeah. Josh Centers was here a few episodes ago to talk about it, and it is. In fact, he taught me some things that I didn't know I could do with my Apple TV, and I thought I had kept up and knew everything. So, it just goes to show you that the stuff goes out, and if there's a criticism of Apple to be had, it's probably that they don't always do the best job of letting you know about all the new capabilities.
I think that's true, especially with the Apple TV.
Yeah, but it also means that they're under the radar, at least so far. Mm-hmm. Dan, just to shift subjects, and before we run out of time, you and I again talked pre-show about the fact that you've been experimenting a little bit in a limited fashion with home automation, and I wanted to get you to talk about that and what drove you to it and why you like it.
Well, a while back I got, for testing reasons, some of Belkin's Wemo hardware, which originally the Wemo was one little box. It was basically an electrical outlet that you plug into your current electrical outlet, and then you connect it to your Wi-Fi network. And what it would do is let you turn whatever's connected to that outlet on or off, or schedule timers for it using your iOS device. Since then, they've expanded the line a lot. And the reason I was interested in it is because if you're building a house now, you can spend a lot of money to get a lot of home automation features in the house, but they're expensive. You can have like a big control center that handles everything, but it's very expensive. And the idea behind the Wemo is, look, just put one of these where you need automation, and then this will handle it. And initially, it was kind of limited. It was just one outlet. The app was a little buggy. It wasn't very reliable. But over the last year and a half, they've really been adding to it. And they now have a line of products. They've got, besides the original switch, they've got a motion detector switch, which includes it's a little small motion detector that's fairly inconspicuous. And you can then use that as a trigger for the switch. So whenever it detects motion, it turns on the corresponding switch. There's a light switch. You actually replace your own light switch with this light switch that has its own Wi-Fi circuitry and timer and everything in it. And that's great for lights that are on a dedicated switch rather than plugged into a wall outlet. They've even got like an Insight switch, which is a Wemo Insight switch, which is a version of their Insight product that monitors energy usage and things like that, so you can see how much whatever's connected to it is using and get the Wemo features. And we've gotten to the point now where we've got maybe 3 or 4 switches of the regular switches, and then 3 of the light switches in our house. And I have to say, it's with a lot of firmware updates they've added and updates to the app, it's now a pretty cool little thing in that for under a couple $100, we've now got a good amount of automation in our house. We've got a couple rooms where the lights automatically go on at sunset and go off at a certain hour later that night. When we're not there, they can turn on and off if there's ever motion. We've got another area of the house where when someone walks by, the light turns on. This is mainly at night, so when the kids get up, if the kids wake up, they're not walking down the hallway in pitch black. And over the holidays, we had to set up so that whenever anybody walked in the family room, the Christmas tree lights went on. And it's really kind of nice to and this is, admittedly first world problem thing, but, we're watching TV of the family and where the big TV is at, and the light's on. We're all kind of like hanging out, relaxing in the chairs. Just pull out your iPhone, turn off the light, and watch the movie, right? And so this isn't the stuff that you need to have to survive, but the whole family's actually we've taken a liking to this, and it's really pretty cool that you can do this for a pretty low price. And the other things Belkin is working on, they showed some of these at CES, is they're now licensing this technology to other companies. For example, I don't know if you saw, but Crock-Pot now has a Wemo-enabled Crock-Pot.
No, I hadn't seen this, but I think I'm gonna love this.
Well, I mean, it's genius when we think about it, because I don't know how much you did this when you were growing up, but when I was growing up, we had a lot of crock pot meals. And what happens is you turn them on at like 8 in the morning and it cooks all day. And so that by the time you get home at night, it's like a big one solid thing of mush crock pot cooked food, right? So you can now set this up where like some of them had timers. You could say, okay, I'm leaving at 4, so let's set the timer for 5:30. So by the time I get home, it's ready. But what if you work late that day? So they've now got it so you can actually start your crock pot remotely from wherever you're doing, or set a schedule, or set a timer, and do all this from the app. And so anything that's Wemo enabled, you can use the Wemo app to make schedules and to turn things on and off directly, or you can do rules so that if one thing happens, something else happens. And I'm sure you've heard of if this then that, IFTTT, is that right?
Yeah.
.com, where different things can happen depending on email messages, Twitter posts, Facebook, and there's actually Wemo integration with IFTTT now. So so if you send a tweet that says, "Hey, I'm on my way home," your crockpot can turn on and be ready for you. So it's interesting. They've really taken the idea of home automation, but they've, instead of looking at it from the point of view of let's make an entire system that someone has to come and install, they've just said, you know what? It's not a lot of people who want automation. They just need this little thing or this little thing, or they just want to be able to turn this on and off. And so they're providing a la carte solutions for it, but they can also work together. And I haven't tried any of the other options out there, but we've been using it and we like it a lot. And it kind of feels like the future when your lights are all, doing their own thing, and we like it a lot. It's pretty cool.
I think this fits in with the Apple TV discussion. We're seeing more and more of these, I hesitate to say small because that indicates size, but a little more simple, a little more easy to operate, but definitely more affordable devices that do just a couple things and they do them really well. And I think we're talking about the Apple TV. We're talking about the Wemos. There was a time that everybody wanted to sell you the big, like you say, the big whole house system, or, that it was really expensive to get each one because it had to have, control panels and be wired in and all. And the Wemo stuff, a lot of it doesn't have to be wired in. It just screws in or plugs in to whatever you've got already. They're bringing the future to us in a way that we can, those of us that want to can implement it and implement it affordably and not have to, go hire the geek in residence somewhere to make sure it all works.
Well, right. And the other thing I think for a consumer that makes this appealing is that you can taste before you buy. So instead of saying I need to spend $30,000 to make home automation, to make a home automation system in my house, I can spend $40 for a light switch, or $30 on sale for a wall outlet, and see if I like this stuff. And if I do, I can add more. And the same with, Sonos. I mentioned Sonos earlier. Theirs is a similar thing on a higher price point, but you can spend $300 or $250 or $500 on one room. And if you like it, you can easily add another room at a time over the course of months or years, and get it that way, rather than having to spend $50,000 on an AV installer who's wired your whole home and given you a system that is going to be out of date in 10 years when it uses technology nobody uses anymore. So there are also benefits, I think, for the consumer, in that you don't have to go all out. You can just try it and see if you like it.
Yeah, I've gone the Sonos route. I like the Sonos, and there are lots of reasons that
it's great.
Yeah, and we won't go off on that tangent too far. But I have to tell you, a couple of years ago now, my sister built a house, and I said, the one thing you want to do is you want to make sure you get an in-home audio system. You'll love it because then you have music everywhere and control it. And she quoted it, and they wanted like $11,000 to put this in. And it's like, that's crazy. Forget this. And so we ended up getting her several Sonos units, and, for a fraction, and I mean a fraction of that price, she's got something that is more portable. She can move it. She can do whatever she wants with it. Frankly, it's probably more flexible. And because she's got the iPhone to control it, she doesn't have to go to a central location or do anything that the original installation people wanted. She was going to have to set up zones and do all this stuff. And you realize how simple it's become and how much you can do on your own, and you don't have to be a real geek to do it.
Right, and an upgrade is as simple as upgrading one system in one room rather than tearing out the entire thing and putting it back in, right?
Right.
And even the Wemo thing, the other thing that people I've seen complaints about is also that it's not, it's much less expensive than having it done custom, but it's not inexpensive. The light switch, if it's not on sale, is $50, and as opposed to like maybe $18 for a comparable standard light switch, and the wall outlet is $40 or $50 as opposed to $5 or $10 for a regular wall outlet. So we're not talking inexpensive, but you can find most of them on sale. When we bought our third light switch, we got it from Newegg for like $38, and they're going to come down, and I believe Belkin's even working on light bulbs, so you don't even have to buy the switch. You could just put in the light bulb, and the light bulb itself has the Wemo circuitry built into the base. So you're taking, and it's going to be an LED light bulb. So those are $15 to $20 each. So you're going to spend $40 for the the Wemo version, whatever. But so it's not cheap, but it's much less expensive than if you were going to go pay someone to do this for you. And I think that's, like you were saying, I think it's great for consumers that we're able to get the kind of technology that people have talked about for years with prices that are more in line with what normal people can afford if they want to do it.
Yeah. Well, Dan, we haven't done this nearly enough, and I just hope we can both stay healthy long enough to do it again soon. This has been a lot of fun, and
yes,
hopefully the folks have learned a little something, and if they haven't learned it, at least maybe we gave them some things to think about, because there are a lot of new capabilities, and they're sitting out there very affordably. In fact, they may be sitting on top of your TV right now. You just have to go and push the right button.
Right.
So, Dan, what else, to wrap up, what else are you doing at Macworld right now? What beats are you covering, or what's going on with you and the writing?
Well, my usual beats, I cover hardware, Mac and iOS hardware, and accessories, Mac software, how-tos, pretty much. We're all pretty flexible over at Macworld. Most of us can cover about anything over there, but those are the ones that I usually focus on. And they're keeping us busy. But you can find the stuff over at macworld.com.
Great. Well, it's great to talk to you. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Chuck. I'll be here.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Notables on MacVoices. He's Dan Frakes. Check the show notes. You can follow us both on Twitter, see what we're both up to, and hopefully we'll see you back here again real soon on MacVoices. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date with all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.